Lara, what can the GOP do to better address? Nothing enrages me more than Joe Biden and his flat-out lies about what Donald Trump has said in the past, continually lying about him, and these are discredited lies. Even Snopes has shown how false these are with the very fine people on both sides after he specifically said he wasn't talking about the white supremacists. He said it again last night, as well as the lie about the troops at Normandy when he supposedly said that they were losers and suckers. He keeps repeating these no matter what is said by any, even the liberal outlets.
Matter.
How do you combat that?
Yeah, well, I think that's what they have to bank on the left. What are they selling the American people right now? 4 more years of what we'd already had, but worse, because Kamala Harris is far more radical and far more leftist than Joe Biden. People can't survive. They know they have failed the American people, so they can only operate in lies. You hear it all the time. Federal abortion ban, Donald Trump wants. No, he said he wants that it should be back in the states. It shouldn't be decided at a federal level. Everything they do is operating in lies. And so, look, it sadly is incumbent upon us as the RNC and the Trump campaign to try and combat that. And I think the only way you can do that is actually show Donald Trump in his own words and show what he truly said. And nothing enrages me more personally than the Charlottesville very fine people hoax.
Oh, I know.
They started with that early on to try and divide people, to try and suggest that somehow a man who's president of the United States, who wants every American to realize their success and their version of the American dream. Donald Trump had it his whole life. He worked very hard to achieve it. He wants every American to have that, to tell him this guy doesn't want you to succeed. He thinks white supremacists and neo-Nazis are great. It's absurd. But we have to continue to show people Donald Trump in his own words and what he actually said, which is that there were very fine people on both sides, except the neo-Nazis and white supremacists who should be condemned totally. Verbatim what Donald Trump
We've
said.
all seen the video. We watched it live. We know what it was actually said.
And yet he continues to get away with the bald-faced lie over and over and over again. Democrats have also done a really good job with repositioning Project 25 as some sort of kookery. And really, I don't know if the RNC is okay with them repositioning that, but most of the proposals, in fact, all the proposals I've seen, are pretty reasonable. You know, protect the border. We're pro-life. I mean, these are things that just make sense for the Conservative Party. Is that something that Donald feels is necessary to distance himself from?
Well, I think you're right. There are some ideas in there that are very productive and would be great for this country. There are some ideas in there that might be a little more extreme. And the problem is Donald Trump hasn't had anything to do with Project 2025. This is a think tank. This is something outside of his purview. And it is, again, it just speaks to what we were talking about, which is that the Democrats have to try and make Donald Trump look extreme and crazy when, in fact, that is who they are on the other side.
Yep.
Donald Trump is much more centrist, and I think more people find themselves leaning to the Republican side of the aisle because the Democrats have gone so far left and so extreme. You know, it's sad that this is what we're having to argue about, and we're having to distance Donald Trump from, because he's like, look, I haven't had time to review all of this. I know some of the things I've seen I don't agree with. And so he's not going to, say, oh, I'm on board for all of this before he really knows what it is. I'll tell you what the American people should be hearing about. They should be hearing about how they get inflation down, how they get more money in their pockets, how we bring the prices of gas down, close our southern border, bring our troops back home, make sure that we are not engaged in foreign wars and sending money overseas. But that's not what Democrats want to talk about, because they know they've taken the country in the wrong direction on all of those issues. And it's why when you look at polling between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, he beats her every single time handily in polls when it comes to the economy, immigration, crime, and that's what the American people truly care about.
Yeah, and you're right. I think it's really critical that he stays focused on those things, because those are provable problems that the country is facing right now. And so hopefully there are people around him that are helping to keep him focused on that message.
People call me all the time. I get texts all day about this. Here's what I'll say, and I agree with you. Look, the American people want to hear, how will you do this? How will you fix this? How will you give us our lives back? I'll tell you what you're not going to hear. You're not going to hear that from the DNC out of Chicago for the next 3 nights.
That's for
sure.
You're not going to hear it because they don't have a plan. But, the funny thing with Donald Trump, if you go back to especially the primaries, think about it like around a year ago when Ron DeSantis and you had a whole host of different Republicans vying for the GOP nomination. There were a lot of people who said, oh, just back off, stop hitting Ron DeSantis. There were a lot of nicknames that came out and all these things. Donald Trump sometimes does things in a different way because he's not a politician.
Wait, what?
Wait, we're talking about the same guy, Donald Trump? Huh.
But the funny thing is, if you look at those things, it's actually what makes him such a great president. It gave him the ability to negotiate trade agreements with Xi Jinping, to walk across the DMZ and shake hands with Kim Jong-un of North Korea, to make sure that we held Iran accountable. And there were no new wars when Donald Trump was president. We had peace agreements in the Middle East.
Important.
It's that way of thinking, and really, there's some genius to it in some ways, and oftentimes the things for which people typically criticize Donald Trump, you go back and look and you're like, that was actually kind of genius. He's labeling Kamala Harris and he's calling her these names, but they're not wrong. Kamala Harris is not a smart person. I think she failed the bar maybe 3 times before she passed it.
Yeah.
So, you know what? If it sticks and it works and it gets people to actually realize who someone is, maybe it's effective. And maybe when you go back and look, Donald Trump wasn't so crazy and wrong in his tactics and techniques in the past. So I hear it, and he does know the policy, knows it back, front, and sideways, and he'll tell you in an hour and a half long press conference something you won't see Kamala Harris do.
That's for sure. That was awesome.